Alright, people, what are we looking at here? So, anyone who's familiar with Two Bats Gaming, I think I've referenced him in a few of my videos. But what you're looking at right here in this below is an NAOTP. I'm gonna call it an argument for lack of a better term. They're not really arguing; it's more of a civilized discussion between two overgrown bald men. About AOTP and how these fellas feel about like which colors are most powerful and like where their strengths and weaknesses lie. This video, it's called I gotta look at the name. It's called AOTP Rebuttal to a Rebuttal. I'm actually gonna play through Two Bats Gaming's video, and I'm gonna make my own response to it because I actually went back and watched this video. First of all, I love this conversation between both of these guys, and Two Bats put out some fantastic AOTP content. But I guess I'm mostly doing this because I'm just enthralled with this video, and I think there are counterpoints that even I want to make against what both of these guys say, because I don't agree with everything even between the two of them. Anyway, I'm gonna put in my own reaction to their arguments for 4 or 5 years after the original argument happened, because I'm an asshole. But I'm just going to explain where I think these guys. Alright, again, this is an opinion piece, but I'm going to explain where I think these guys have some of the info or some of the plays or like their ideas on like what makes colors stronger than others. I'm going to explain where I think that they have it wrong, and again, my opinion. I've skipped a couple of minutes of the video. He's kind of already talked about some of the beginning, so I've skipped, I believe I'm at about the 3-minute mark. Yeah, I'm at the 3-minute mark of his video, and I will put the link to it in the description below, as well as the original rebuttal from this fellow, Bill Dozer. I think that's his handle. So I'm gonna try. I better remember to add both of these in the description so you can watch the original two videos, because I'm probably gonna cut out pieces of my reaction and just pick certain points out, just as much as these fellows did for their videos as well. Like they picked out certain counterpoints that they wanted to say, hey, I actually disagree with this, here's why, and then they kind of skipped through the rest of what they agreed with. I'll probably do something relatively similar as I speed through here.
Okay, so let's jump into this week's episode of Two Grown Bald Men Debating a Tabletop Game. Yay!
Yay!
Let's just...
Alright, so on that note, I'm at the 2.5-minute mark, not the 3. I think I said 3-minute mark.
say
Go.
that I was not a fan of how Forrest broke it down into what colors were the most powerful in just the chord set. I will agree that there's no definitive answer as to which color is the strongest. It all depends on the player, the tactical mindset, experience level, and the game type, which I think is something Forrest left out. The game type matters.
Bill, you're absolutely right. Different game types can have a very noticeable influence on unit strength. Now, in our video, I did discuss how different game types will strongly affect certain abilities. I think the most standout example of this is probably the illusionary projection / Jace location switching thing. It's incredibly useful in game types where you need to secure an objective point, but really lackluster in just straight up deathmatch brawl sort of things.
Huh. Okay, so I'll pause right there. Yeah. I generally agree that unit strength, I would say especially creature strength, is heavily dependent on like the map you're playing or the game type you're playing. There's one core thing that AOTP brings that HeroScape kind of doesn't, is that AOTP, like you have your Planeswalker. The Planeswalker is the heartbeat of the army. It doesn't matter what game mode you're playing. If you have a Planeswalker in your army and like you have creatures that you need to summon and you have a spell deck that you need to draw from and play spells from your hand, I guess eventually, you can't afford to let your Planeswalker die. So almost regardless of whatever mode you're playing, the Planeswalker needs to have like everything surrounding your Planeswalker in your army needs to support your Planeswalker's survivability for sure. Because if your planeswalker dies, the game is effectively, maybe not effectively over. If your planeswalker dies early enough, the game is effectively over. You're going to be severely gimped because you cannot draw any spells, you cannot play any spells, and you cannot summon any additional creatures either if you have creatures in reserve. Which is again why I say if you die like early mid game, in the extreme late game, your planeswalker dying isn't a big deal because you've likely already summoned all of your creatures and maybe you have 1 or 2 spells left. But all that aside, the game mode doesn't entirely matter to an extent. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, the game mode does matter and the map does matter to an extent. I just want to say that your planeswalker and therefore like how your color attributes to either your survivability for your planeswalker or your ability to kill the enemy planeswalker, I think can heavily influence how good a color is in any given game mode. And on that note, I will say that blue seems really good, especially for non-deathmatch types, because illusionary projections, you got project self, you got well, I'm gonna try to stick to the base set. But the leyline phantoms can also like walk wherever they want to go, so like they can go and take glyphs, or if you're playing King of the Hill, they can just walk right towards the hill. They don't have to worry about disengages. They can walk through enemies. They're pretty good at blocking. Like you can block traffic with them by forming a wall or causing your opponent to take a ton of disengages, whatever. But blue's mobility makes a lot of non-deathmatch types, I would say, pretty significantly easier compared to what other colors offer. And on that note too, I wouldn't even say that the illusionary projections are terrible even at deathmatch. Because like getting your blue planeswalker and or the illusionary projection using illusionary deception, they both get disengaged while they're teleporting. That's pretty powerful by itself. And again, that contributes to planeswalker survivability, that you can teleport your planeswalker with one of the projections at any given time. Oh, and any turn where you're taking a turn with your planeswalker. That contributes to planeswalker survivability, keeps your planeswalker safe, which is important in every game mode, I guess, bar if you're playing the Eldrazi Ruiner takedown scenario from Battle for Zendikar, and you're the guy using the Eldrazi Ruiner. You don't even have a planeswalker at that point, though. So, anyway.
And
binomial distribution, this is really good for determining what your chance of doing a certain action that has a probability is if you do it repeatedly. For instance, what's your chance of rolling a shield if you roll that dice 5 times? And secondly, we looked at hypergeometric calculations when it comes to your chance of getting a certain card in a certain number of cards.
I have never heard of hypergeometric calculations. This dude is on another freaking level.
Free exchange of ideas.
Free exchange of ideas.
We love that stuff.
How did I miss that?
So, anyway.
That's a damn good American.
So,
well,
let's go ahead and get into...
Fuck America. This is a man that appreciates liberty.
The best colors
How about that?
Of Arena of the Planeswalkers in F. Number 5 is blue. Blue. I believe that was number...
I'm not sure if this guy's playing free-for-alls or what. I should say that everything that I've said so far and everything I will say in this video is going to be in the context of 1v1 on a kind of competitive AOTP or Hero Escape map. Yeah, anyway, so you're on a decent map that isn't like gigantic hills and valleys. Because when you play a 3-player game, it's anything goes. The game is politics at that point. It's not just pure strategy. Well, it's not pure mechanical game strategy. When you're playing 3 players or more, it's political. You gotta work the politics to your angle at that point. So I don't care much for that kind of, I'm not going to strategize around how to politically manipulate people in a game. I prefer the 1v1. Anyway, yeah, I find it very funny that this blue at number 5, it feels like a really hot take. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think at worst, blue should be number 3, but frankly, number 1 or 2. Anyway.
Number 2 on their set.
I agree.
Their video.
Number 2 is pretty decent for blue.
Can be a powerhouse, and that's about it. The illusionary projections are pushovers. The spells in the blue deck almost...
I don't really find the projections to be pushovers when they offer the highest range for a creature at 6, and they have 3 attack. I feel like they often get height advantage, and when you're rolling 3 three attacks, three different attacks of 4 dice or potentially more, I feel like they're quite powerful. There are pushovers defensively.
Can the blue be powerful? Absolutely. They could possibly be the most powerful color in the entire game, period.
That I agree on.
But they require
That I agree on. I agree too. That's why I find this odd that he puts it at number 5. It's like, is he expecting that all of the players that play AOTP are like complete dummies or something? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if I would put blue at the most powerful every time. Over the course of a ton of games, that blue is probably one of the top 2 colors, especially in the base set, especially under control, with a player who knows like what to do, what to expect from the other side. Because again, like part of blue is controlling the other player, reducing like their ability to kill you. Especially via like unsummons and that kind of crap. This guy must be speaking from the standpoint of, if you're brand new to AOTP, blue's number 5, and I guess I would still say blue is like number 4 or 3, even on that note. But when you get experienced players in, and like everyone's playing that, the base set, I think blue is easily top 2. Just once you know what you're doing, they're that good.
A PhD in tactics and mindset, and it's just, unless you are General Norman Schwarzkopf, it's very clunky. And in my experience, blue is usually the first to go. Jace's Mind Stealer ability is great, but you have to roll a 16 out of 20, or 16 out of a 20-sided die for it to be effective. That's 1 in 4 odds. I don't want to see that at the poker table.
It is low odds.
On Battlefield, and I don't want to see that on Arena of the Planeswalkers.
Okay, so here's where I need to hop in, and here's where statistics come in. Now, Bill, you're absolutely correct that the Mind Stealer... Well, first off, let's cover the Mind Stealer ability real quick in case you don't recall it. Jace, the blue planeswalker, has an ability called Mind Stealer, wherein if you're within 4 spots of an opponent's planeswalker, on Jace's turn, you can roll a d20. If you hit 16...
At the end of Jace's turn, which is kind of important, honestly.
through 20, then basically you get to steal their opponent figurine, their planeswalker, for 1 turn and basically do whatever he would do on its turn. All right, cool. So, Bill, absolutely right, it's a 25% chance, but that's only if you attempt it once in a game.
That's true.
If you attempt it 5 times in a game, your chance to have it happen at least once becomes 76%. And this is where the stats will come up on in-screen and editing. All right, cool. So anyways, yes, there is risk in this, and I'll cover that in a minute, but to say it's only just a 25% chance is not entirely true. I find in most games I play as blue, I'll get at least 3 or 4, and sometimes up to like 5 or 6, especially in endgame, maybe 7 or 8 even, chances to use the Mind Stealer ability. Again, especially in late game where it's just your planeswalkers usually duking it out. The rest of the units have probably passed by the wayside.
Yeah.
Have it happen even once. If you get that ability to proc even once, you can really screw up an opponent. I'm finding in a lot of games where I have it happen at least once, maybe twice, I can net somewhere between 3 and 6 damage to their planeswalker by using the Mind Stealer ability.
Wait, what? How is he dealing 3 to 6 damage to an enemy planeswalker by taking control of it? Alright, let me slow this down. Alright, I'm not sure, maybe he misspoke and like meant to say like damage to the opposing creatures. Yeah, because like unless he's playing on gigantic maps with like tons of fall damage, you're not really dealing, or like if you're playing with like custom like lava rules or something, you're not dealing 3, you're probably not dealing any damage at all to the enemy planeswalker by taking control of them with Mind Stealer. Like that doesn't make sense at all. Maybe he's playing where... I hope he's not playing where he rolls his own disengages against a planeswalker that he now controls. But in addition to that, I hope that he doesn't think that his opponent is forced to roll LEAs, leave engagement attacks, against against their own planeswalker while he temporarily controls it. Because that's not true either. Best case scenario, if your planeswalker gets controlled and like your opponent walks, that planeswalker that they control now through all of your figures, you don't like, you have the option to roll leave engages, but you don't want to kill your own planeswalker. So maybe he thinks that the LEAs are forced as well, and that's how, because like you just walk back and forth in between a bunch of their previous teammates, and maybe that's why you think like you roll a ton of dice and you're just like, No, your opponent has full control, and frankly, you should never roll an LEA against your own Planeswalker while they are temporarily under the control of an enemy Jace. That's a terrible idea. And I want to take this back one more step, is that Mind Stealer being at the end of Jace's turn does make a big difference, in my opinion. Because, like, if you could use it, like, if it was just once per turn, like a standard activated ability, you could defensively use it to, like, roll it at the start of the turn or even in the middle of the turn before Jace moves, and then, like, whether you succeed or not, you could then walk him away, which means he could be, up to 6 spaces away because his move is 6 from, well, 6 plus up to an additional 4 because that's the range of Mind Stealer. But I'm like, so it makes a big difference that you have to do it at the end of the turn because you're ending your turn within 4 spaces of an enemy Planeswalker, which means if that Mind Stealer fails, that Planeswalker could potentially come and beat the piss out of you on the next turn, and or summon additional creatures from their reserves directly adjacent to your Jace. For my average game, when I used Jace Balerion from the first set, I usually attempt Mind Stealer like before the very end game if it gets that far, like before where it's just like maybe the Planeswalker's going at it with like 1 or 2 creatures. Before that point, I probably roll Mind Stealer 1 or 2 times. Like even attempt it. Forget actually succeeding. Yeah, towards the end, like if it gets to an end game state where it's like Planeswalker versus Planeswalker, sure you might get it, but on like a standard Heroescape like competitive map, you're not doing a whole lot in the end game with Mind Stealer other than like maybe dropping the enemy Planeswalker in water so that way like they have to walk out of the water and they can't get back adjacent to Jace or something. You could use the mind control or the mind stealing Planeswalker, the one you take control of, to like kill their creatures. But again, in an end game state, the creatures don't entirely matter. I mean, of course, that's not completely true, but in an end game state where it's Planeswalker versus Planeswalker, typically you just want to kill their Planeswalker because the Planeswalker is usually the strongest thing on the field at that point. So I don't think Mind Stealer is as good in the late game, like in the very end game, where you probably can roll it more because the Planeswalkers are probably naturally more in close proximity. I call it 4 spaces of social distancing sometimes as a joke.
That's almost enough, and in some cases, enough to outright kill their Planeswalker. I think it's a.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate, I'm not really sure how he's dealing 3 to 6 damage to an enemy Planeswalker by using Mind Stealer.
Now, given that we ranked blue number 2 and Bill ranks him number 5.
I'll stop there. I'll stop one more time just to say that Mind Stealer is more game changing in like the early to mid game, but it's also a lot more risky for the same reason. Is that like if you succeed with Mind Stealer, you can walk an opponent's Planeswalker like way beyond all of your figures. You can attack one of their squads too, and then. What am I thinking here? So actually, I guess there's 2 lines of play. I'm always thinking of like Gideon, because like Gideon's usually the one I'm rolling Mind Stealer against, and he's kind of ass cheeks to begin with. But like, especially against Gideon, like when you have to walk him further away, like you can literally block him off with your own units very easily, and he can almost never get back in contact with Jace after that. But even like Liliana, like you if you mind control Liliana. Or Mind Steal Liliana, like you can go snuff out one of her freaking Bladed Reavers if she summoned it. You can literally like, go attack it and more than likely snuff it out, which is super powerful.
Where I disagree is that blue's difficulty curve negates their high ranking in our list. I base this on a few aspects. First off, bringing numbers into it, looking at the stats. So one way to compare stats is literally to just add up every stat on a unit's card and see what it totals. And if you do this with blue and you add up all their units and their Planeswalker and everything, their total stats equals 64, which is 5 more than the nearest closest color. You have a 12 life total, 11 attack total, and 10 defense total across their 3 units. Now, only red has more total attack, and blue has 2 more total defense than any other color. Of course, certain abilities and...
Wait. Alright, I mean, this is there's a lot of very odd flaws with that kind of mentality. I'm not really sure where he's getting that red has more attack. Because Chandra has 3, the Firecats have 3, and the Phoenixes have 2. Like, if you just add up their attack numbers, they have 8. That's weak, comparatively, if you're only looking at that number. Yeah, I mean, Jace having 5 power is just dumb, and I agree, though. But it's like, so Jace, ley lines, and projections are 5-3-3. But either way, I guess I'm kind of pausing it to say I'm not really sure where he got the red numbers from, but just purely taking like life plus move plus range plus toughness plus power and saying that's how good a color is. Of course, I think he even said it himself, and it's not like entirely true. But I would probably, if I were to do this, I would take it one step further and say you take 1/2 of the power value, and then take 1/3 of the toughness value. So it's like if blue has 5 for Jace, 3 for the projections, 3 for the Phantoms of the Land Phantoms. So you have 11. I would cut that in half to be like that's like your average number of skulls or cross weapon swords. Or cross weapon symbols. So you get what, between 5 and 6, 5.5. So like I would consider their power to be 5.5 for the color, and then their toughness to be whatever it is. What is it? 5 plus 2 plus 3. So it's 10 divided by 3, which is 3.3. So again, like tough or their power number to be what I say between 5 and 6, and then their toughness number to be between 3 and 4. Like I would add that, and then because you never know what you're going to get. So range and movement and life are all like static values. There's no rolling dice. Like those aren't random numbers. You get those every single game. Where your power and your toughness are, well, number one, they're actually quite easily modified via your glyphs and the height and all that crap. And number two, you're rolling dice, which means like you always expect like whatever your toughness is, whenever you roll it, you're usually expecting about 1/3 of that value to actually show up. So it's like when you roll 10 dice, you usually expect anywhere between 2 and 4 shields, although defense is, again, kind of clunky and swingy. But and then like when you roll 10 power, like if you have 10 attack dice, you usually expect about 4 to 6 hits. So I think that's a more accurate depiction of how good a color is. But again, this is kind of I don't think I'd ever take it in this direction to be like, here, just add up all their stats and this is how good they are. That's a very, I don't know if I'm going to call it slippery slope or just like a very, it's like subjective. Like it's something you have to really think about hard, I feel like.
Enchantments, so on and so forth, do modify exactly what stats a unit will have in a certain battle.
Right.
But from a baseline, which is where you got to start, blue highly exceeds everything else in the base set in terms of total number of.
And on that note, I do generally agree that like blue's base stats for most of their figures, or even in the base set, I would say from their figures kind of across the board, they're really obscene. They're quite obscene. They're a bit too high.
Blue's real strength, however, and I covered this in the video, is their spells. Now, blue lets you either remove or steal those enchantments. Jace's Erasure spell puts 16% of your opponent's deck directly in the trash. And Talent of the Telepath lets you cast their best spell against them. It's insane what blue spells can do. And this overall is the reason that I disagree.
I'm not a big fan of Talent of the Telepath personally, though. Only because it's like, it lets you cast their best spell against them, but only after they've played it. Or I guess if you get lucky with Jace's Erasure. Again, keeping with the first set only, there's no way, like you don't have the Lantern Geist, you don't have, is it Pieces of the Puzzle? You don't have the ability to look at your opponent's deck at this point in the game's life. You're just playing Jace's Erasure for the hell of it, just to be like, oh, I hope I kill some good cards. But anyway, Talent of the Telepath generally means they're playing their best spell against you first. So I guess hope you survive. Like I'm mostly thinking of like Titanic Growth and Twin Flame. You can also counter their best spell, I guess, as well. But there's not a lot of control compared to when you get the Lantern Geist later on in Shadows over Innistrad, where you can look at the top card of their deck and then put it back on the top of their deck and then play Jace's Erasure to kill it. And then, like, you know for sure you're killing a powerful card, and then you can play Talent of the Telepath to use it against them, and they won't even have the opportunity to play their own great spell.
That blue's difficulty curve warrants lowering their ranking. I agree that the unit strategy itself is difficult, but the stealth strategy is simple. Just cast the fucking spells. You are basically, with blue, you're relying on your spells to get their units out of the way so that you can bum rush their planeswalker. And that's how I play them, and that's how I frequently win with them. Get your units to their planeswalker and kill their planeswalker. Cut off the head and the body dies.
That kind of goes along with what I said as far as like when you're playing AOTP, it kind of doesn't entirely matter. Like as he said, cut off the head, the body dies. Almost regardless of whatever mode you're playing, if your planeswalker dies, you kind of just lose the game. Or at least if they die early enough. Again, like if it's not at least like 10 turns, whatever, 8, 9, 10 turns into the game, you probably lose if your planeswalker has died before then, because you don't have access to the rest of your spells, and you may not be able to summon, or say you may still have creatures in reserve, and now they are effectively dead. I just want to bring up one more point that, yeah, the unsummoned effects of blue are just like very poorly balanced for how cheap some of them are and how powerful some of them are on the enemy's turn. As he mentioned with Aether Spout's Call to Heal, it's just kind of dumb how powerful those are, because not only did your opponent have to summon that squad the turn before, and then like they'd have to take their current turn with that squad, but yeah, so like they can move and then try and attack, and then they literally lose their entire attack phase unless like against smarter opponents could like try and spread out their attacks and be like, oh, I'll attack some of your unenchanted figures first and then attack the enchanted figure last in case it's the unsummoned spell, like it's the Aether Spouts are called to Heal. But it's really dumb that like they're basically, that squad is out of the game for 2 turns in a way, because it's at least 2 more opponent turns before they can, well, first turn they summon that squad back out, and then the second turn they can get the squad back onto the, or sorry, on the second turn they can activate the squad again. But the next point is that it's like all the unsummoned effects are also enchantment destroying effects, which I think is kind of a terrible mistake. They need to do one of 2 things, I should say. They need to change the rule that says your enchantments are destroyed when your creature is unsummoned. Because, I mean, that just makes the unsummoning, the return creature to reserve things a little too powerful on their own. Because it's like, not only are you now sending, you're bouncing their attacks off of, and they're losing their squad, it's getting off the battlefield, but now they're also losing any attached enchantments, which is just really bad. Like, it makes white, I feel like it's part of what makes white so piss poor, especially against blue, is that like all the unsummons is like the rocks and the core hookmasters gotta go in and try and attack, they get bounced nonstop, so it's like you have to hold on to your enchantments for a long time. And then when you finally do get to play your enchantments, you get the Psychic Rebuttal, you get the, or no, not the Psychic Rebuttal, you get Scatter Arc, and then you also get Misdirection, which fucks with you even further. It's really, they should have made the unsummoning, the Call to Heal, the Aether Spouts, and the unsummoned card itself more expensive, like easily doubled the price, if not more, for each of those cards, because it's like you're not only you're removing the creature, you're also killing enchantments, which, like, when you got green, you got Primeval Light and Naturalize, I think it is. Like, those are quite expensive and can only destroy enchantments. Meanwhile, blue unsummons a whole squad and destroys their enchantments for even cheaper than what green's destroy enchantment spells do. It's kind of insane.
Number 4 is white. And this almost has everything to do with Gideon, and who is the Thanos of this game, in my opinion. And
what does that even mean? Look at his face. I'm kind of shy. I can't help but say white is the worst color, especially in scope of the first set. Oh my gosh. But I wonder what he means by Gideon is the Thanos of this set. Gideon's nothing special. Is he saying Thanos is nothing special?
His Counter-Strike ability, the Counter-Strike, it's so much more devastating than it appears to be, and allow me to explain. Before buffs, Gideon...
In a game where the primary figure that you need to kill has a range of 6 or more... Wait, no, Chandra has 5. Has a range of 5 or more. I don't think Gideon's Counter-Strike is that good, frankly. Especially when defense dice give you the 33% odds of a shield versus the attacker's 50. It's fun, I'll give you that. It's fun when it happens, but it's not super reliable, or I would say not even that good.
Gideon gets 5 defense die. The only other character or squad in the core set that has that many attack die before buffs or spells is Jace at 5. So the numbers game heavily favor Gideon in every defense roll. He's almost always going to have more defense die than his opponent has attack die, and that's before any spell cards are played. In my experience, Gideon deals damage with Counter-Strike more than 50% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to pause before Mr. Forrest speaks here, but yeah, again, like when you say, like if you have a 5 attack versus 5 defense, like you said, like let's say Jace is directly next to Gideon and they're shooting each other, even ground, no other modifiers, it's 5 to 5. Your Gideon is expecting an average of what is it, 1.6 shields, where your Jace is expecting an average of 2.5 hits. Like, so literally on the average 5 versus 5 attack, your Gideon is taking 1 damage. You're not the averages are not in Gideon's favor in that particular scenario. And then again, this assumes that somehow Gideon got adjacent to Jace, which is just like, Jace has a range of 7. You're not getting near him. And he mentioned like before buffs and that kind of thing. That was another point, is that Gideon, there's nothing that buffs a white planeswalker's defense other than high ground and glyph, as far as I can think. And that includes even the expansions. I don't think there's any other way to increase your white planeswalker defense. So creatures and even opposing planeswalkers, because there are enough spells that buff opposing planeswalkers, like their power, like thinking like Leaf Arrow, Chandra's Fury, that kind of thing. The opposing planeswalkers can get higher attack numbers even through spells. So there's not a lot going for Gideon in this respect, and going for, therefore, his 5 toughness and counter strike.
So this is one where I believe that the statistics actually disagree a little bit with your interpretation.
Yeah, I agree.
And here's how I'm going to cover it. So
I can only think that maybe he thought that there's 3 shields and 3 swords on each die. So maybe, because if it was 50-50, then yeah, like Gideon's a hell of a lot better at 5 defense, but it's not. It's 3 skulls to 2 shield, or it's a 6-sided die with 3 hits, 2 shields, and 1 blank that does nothing.
Gideon's Counterstrike is an amazing ability when it triggers, but it has 2 problems.
It is devastating when it triggers against an adjacent figure.
Problems with it. One is a matter of actual chance, and secondly, he's got to be in melee for it to work. And a planeswalker in melee is not the greatest situation, especially Gideon, who only has 6 life. He could die like that if you roll badly.
Agree.
So let me give you an example.
Agree.
Let's say you're playing Gideon against an opponent who isn't an idiot, and your opponent has buffed up their squad creatures a bit before taking on Gideon, as they should.
Yep.
Let's assume they've gotten their attack up to 5, which is completely possible with a fair amount of unit, enhancement, enchantment, terrain advantages, etc. bonuses. Having 5 attack with a squad is not that rare.
Yeah, completely agree. I would say the average squatty is typically attacking with 4 or 5 dice, frankly. Even in the base set, I would say it's common enough. And when you get, for anyone who's watched my streams, when you get like with the other sets with Battle for Zendikar and Shadows over Innistrad, they get astronomical. Like, you're talking 7, 8 attack dice sometimes.
So let's say Gideon is rolling 5 dice. Now here's the probability to roll X number of shields. To roll 1 shield, you have 86%.
Ooh, pretty.
Chance. 2 shields, 53%. 3 shields, 20%. 4 shields, 4%. And 5 shields, 0.3%.
Are you really at a 0.3% chance to max out on 5 dice with defense? Wait. I should probably try and do the math myself. I'm a little confused. How is it that Gideon rolling 5 dice, capping out at 5 shields out of 5 dice is 0.3, but an attacker also has a 0.3 chance of rolling 5 hits on 5 dice? That doesn't make sense. There's got to be something wrong with the math here. There's no way. Capping out on 5 attack dice should probably be like 3% or something. I feel like, and not 0.3.
So to put it more simply, Gideon's ability is amazing given 2 stipulations. 1, he manages to arrive to a melee battle with a good amount of health left, so he can hold on to his ability. And 2, your opponent isn't an idiot who doesn't buff his melee troops. If your opponent buffs his melee troops or gives them a height advantage, whatever, it's gonna counteract Gideon's ability in most cases. As you said, the numbers don't lie.
Okay, yeah, so I paused briefly there for a sec, just to say that Gideon's life has nothing really to do with Counter-Strike activating or not, other than it might influence your decision to put him in a melee fight or not, depending on how much life he has. That I can agree to be like, well, if Gideon's got 6 life and, there's 1 Blazing Firecat, maybe I'll risk trying to fight the Blazing Firecat. But if Gideon's got like 1 or 2 life, it's like, no, I'm running away like a pussy. But yeah, Gideon's life has really no actual effects, really, though, like as far as like the odds of the outcome of Counter-Strike hitting or not. But I'll make the additional point that Since there are more range 1 planeswalkers as, AOTP goes on, they added, Sorin and Ob Nixilis? And I guess to a slightly lesser extent, Nahiri. Gideon is also much better when he can hold high ground. Like when he can sit on high ground and he's rolling 6 toughness effectively. First of all, his counter strike is more fearsome, but that's again only against range 1 figures. But yeah, and number 2 is that at least even against range figures, by having the additional 1 toughness, at least he's going to survive longer or have a chance of surviving longer than your average planeswalker with 3 or 4 toughness. It's just I feel like it's a very unlikely scenario in the first set, given that all the enemy planeswalkers have a range of 5 or more, which means Gideon's kind of forced to try and chase them down. Especially when you have Gideon's Phalanx, which kind of wants you to stay within 4 spaces of your squad to keep them buffed. Unless, of course, you do the whole play Gideon's Phalanx on the enemy planeswalker, which can work while you put Gideon on high ground, in the back, and so he's harder to kill, and your opponent has to deal with your squads first. Even then, white squads are kind of pushovers. Anyway, we're on a tangent.
And that's where the magic ends, though. The white spells can be helpful. None of them are overpowering. The white squad...
I mostly agree. Most of the white spells really aren't, stupid overpowered like almost every other color has. I think Inspired Charge is their best offensive spell. I do like Inspired Charge a lot. That's their one major burst option where they can just be yo, fuck you. I'm getting +2 power for all 3 of my rocks for the turn and I'm going to trample the hell out of you. That's the only card that is all really I'm coming in hard this turn right now. They don't really have much else. So yeah, I generally agree. White is very defensive and slow rolling.
Odds are a joke. The core Hookmasters have okay stats, but their detainability, it's a one and done situation. It's kind of like the battle of...
Yeah, I totally agree. The core Hookmasters are more or less crap. They just, like you said, their detainability works once, and then that's the end of them. Their range is far too short. It should be higher.
Yeah. He's about to play, but I kind of agree. I don't think the hookers are absolute garbage, considering they have the same base stats as the Rocks veterans, but also have an additional 2 range on top of it. I actually like the hookers a lot because of their cost. Well, number 1, their cost, and number 2, Detain is actually quite good in my opinion, especially in the first set where it's very squad heavy. Stopping your opponent from taking a turn with a squad. For 1 turn it's not exactly the same as Unsummon, but it's very close to be it's almost as if you had unsummoned it and then they resummoned it on their next turn, honestly, because at least while they have 1 squad creature out or 1 squad out, if you detain that 1 squad, they have to take a turn with their planeswalker, and it's almost like you unsummoned the squad anyway. And in some cases, detain is better than unsummoned for that reason, is that you might be able to pound their squad a little bit and then, or I should say, damage their squad while it's detained, or that is play detain on it while it's already damaged and you're not healing it by unsummoning it. So I think these guys are sleeping a little bit. I think the core Hookmasters are probably one of White's best squads across all of the expansions. I don't really like the Rocks very much. I think they're better than the Rocks, frankly. Don't sleep on the hookers. I think they're a very decent squad. And by the way, the nice thing about when you're going against blue is that you can detain blue squad. And if if you ever come across if your hookers trigger those kinds of unsummon effects from blue, the return to your reserve, you can resummon the hookers and then re-detain more blue squads again. So the hookers actually somewhat significantly help white against blue in that sense. So again, I kind of don't like how much these guys shit on the hookers. I feel like the hookers are very reasonable, if not above average. I love buffing my hookers. If y'all have watched my playtests or anything, I am consistent with buffing the hookers because I think they are quite reasonable as units.
The Battle of Blackwater Bay, the imp has played his trick. He can play it no more. That's the core Hookmasters. It can be useful, but only once.
That's fine. It's very powerful for that one time.
They're friggin' useless. I'm sorry. Unless they
yes, I agree. The Rocks are okay. I don't really love them, though.
Stay connected. As a formation, they can be devastating. But that's the only way they're effective at all. And in a game where terrain is included in your battlefield, the Rocks veterans just aren't that effective.
Okay, so I'm going to jump a little ahead of Bill here. In the next upcoming segment of his video, whatever you want to call it, he talks about how the pummel root elementals are a better choice than the Rocks veterans given their stats.
He's correct.
So what I'm talking about here is that the Roxes have 3 attack, 2 defense, and the pummel root elementals have 4 attack and 3 defense. So basically the pummel roots are 1 better in each ability. Now both squads have the trample ability.
Yep.
Now, where I think the Rocks veterans outweigh the pummel roots, because I talk about this in our video, is because I'm taking into account the superior buffing spells of the white deck as compared to the green deck. And
see, I feel like there's about a million ways to take that. I mean, because sit down and think to yourself, let's pretend like the Rocks veterans don't even have battle formation, and they always have 4 toughness. Because, alright, so, again, spells and everything else aside, if you just take battle formation, and like you always have your Rocks veterans in a little triangle so that they get the max of, you know, how they have base 2 toughness, plus 1 for each additional Rocks, which means one guy can be adjacent to 2 other Rocks, because they're a 3-man squad, at best. So, you get 2 toughness plus another 2 at max if they're sitting in like a little triangle formation. So sit and try and pretend like they don't have battle formation at all, and treat them as 3 power, 4 toughness. I do think battle formation is a gimp's ability, and like it doesn't help the Rocks. But again, play with me here. Would you rather have the 1 additional power for the pummel roots or the 1 additional toughness for the Rocks at the pummel roots being at 4 power, 3 toughness, and the Rocks being at 3 power, 4 toughness? For a squad with trample, you want, well, this is my opinion, for a squad with trample, you want that higher power so that you can smash the hell out of things and cause trample damage. Kind of looking back at like the dice, like while you're attacking, you have that 50% chance to get what you're looking for. Where if you take 1 more toughness while you're rolling defense, you only have a 33% chance to roll what you're looking for. So in a lot of ways, I feel like the power is worth more than the toughness is. When you take spells into account, I don't know. There's a lot of parts of me that I like green spells a lot. When you have things like Overrun and Titanic Growth, especially when combined with Trample. The pummel roots are kind of nuts. Oh, and get Paths Revealed. I think Paths Revealed is a base set spell. I might have that wrong. I can't remember. I'm like 90% sure Titanic Growth and Overrun are base set, though. Those are so good when you use them on the pummel roots. It's kind of insane. Pummel roots are definitely more offensive than the Rocks. Like, I play them. It's very odd that they're very statistically, or like, you know, their stats lead you to believe that they're kind of similar. But because of the spells available to green and white, I actually tend to play my pummel roots as more offensive, you know, because like when you get the Overrun going, plus 2 power for all 3 of the pummel roots is fucking insane. And then Titanic Growth also like makes one of them attack with an additional 3 dice. It's very powerful. The pummel roots have a lot more offensive utility than the Rocks. I think Forrest, he seems to like white a lot. What did he rate white? I forget if he rated white at like number 3. He rated white way higher than I would have, and apparently even this fellow here, Billdozer, rated him at number 4. I'm not a big fan of white. I don't think the Rocks are that good. The Rocks veterans are that good.
Here's what I mean in more detail. So, in AOTP, you have a spell deck composed of 12 cards. In the white deck, 6 of those cards are going to be what I call squad buff cards. They buff your squads in some way. Of those 6 buff cards, all of them buff defense in some respect. Furthermore, of those 6 cards, 3 of those are permanent buffs directly applied to the unit. Basically, +1/+1 or something like that.
So he's talking like enchantment, like the 3 enchantments.
It's not temporary, it's not for 1 turn. It's for as long as the enchantment is there.
Yeah.
So, you start your first turn with 4 cards in hand. You draw 1 at the start of your turn. You start the game with 3. You have a 96% chance of starting with at least 1 of the 6 buff cards, and a 74% chance of starting with 1 of the 3 good permanent buff cards. And the good ones would be Blessing, Divine Favor, and Marked by Honor.
Marked by Honor? Blessing? Yeah, Blessing's alright. I like Divine Favor a lot. Marked by Honor just gives you +1 toughness, and it's a hidden enchant. I don't think I'd consider Marked by Honor a good buffing spell. It's okay. I'm kind of shocked he didn't say Honor of the Pure. I feel like I think Honor of the Pure is a base set spell. I might have it wrong, but I would have put Honor of the Pure in place of Marked by Honor if Honor of the Pure is a base set spell. I can't remember.
Of those 3 cards, immediately put your defense equal to the Pummel Roots on the Rocks Veterans. 2 of those 3 also make your attack equal to the Pummel Roots. So let's...
Right. But did he see? He didn't do the reverse for the Pummel Roots to say. So he didn't look at green at all in this aspect. He just told you what white does. He didn't tell you what green does. Like he didn't say. I'm pretty sure Paths Revealed is a base set card, but it's like. So he didn't take into account that the Pummel Roots could have up to 3 more move than the Rocks Veterans. White offers none of that. None of the movement buffs. So they can also get Disengage. I believe the Disengage spell. I forget what it is. But I believe the Disengage spell is, what's it called? Damn it. Sheltering Word? I think that's also in the base set. I could be wrong. I'll verify that. But either way, the 2 big mobility spells from green, which I think are in the base set, he completely disregards those 2 being in the base set and applying those to the Pummel Roots, where the Rocks don't get access to any of that noise. Like they have 5 move that can never be buffed. So the Pummel Roots have that going for them. But the Pummel Roots also have, as I mentioned before, we have Overrun, Titanic Growth. That might be it, actually. But I guess the difference is Titanic Growth gives you 3 additional attack dice, where I don't think any color offers that in one spell. And it's only for 1 turn, but it can be a huge turn. It's a lot of bursts. It's a lot of bursts you can get out of Overrun and Titanic Growth combined, especially. So he's sleeping. Like, he's sleeping, especially when you got Trample. Like, Pummel Roots get in there and smash something with 7 or 9 attack dice, or 10, or, whatever, with height advantage and whatnot. The Pummel Roots take much better of advantage of Trample, in my opinion.
Numbers on the army card are better than ones added by enchantment.
Yep.
However, I think
agree.
the vulnerability is an acceptable trade-off given the battle formation ability on the Rocks Veterans. The Pummel Roots only have Trample, but the Rocks gain +1 defense for every other Rocks Veteran they have adjacent to them. Fight them in a line like they're intended to be, and that's a total of 4 additional defense dice, which is huge in this game. Now, in any case, I feel that the battle formation ability is an equitable trade-off for the -1 attack, -1 defense.
It's a curse.
The baseline Pummel Root elementals
not
with
equitable.
the Rocks Veterans. But due to the aforementioned spells and the fact that battle formation can easily buff them over the Pummel Root stats in the first place, I think the Rocks Veterans, at least anyways, are a great unit. I remember, our most recent game, we played a 5-player game the other day, and the guy playing with the Rocks Veterans had them up to 9 defense every turn. It was ridiculous. They couldn't be killed.
Where was Black in that game? Where was Liliana or Obnixilis, or where was Bone Splinters, or Corrupt kind of help? Just where was a Killing Wave? Where was anything to just murderize them exactly? Because somebody shit on Black in order to let White get out of control like that, or even Red. Even Red could deal with the Rocks when they have a lot of toughness. Battle formation. I think battle formation is a curse, frankly. So to get the optimal use, again, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but to get the optimal buffs, to have 4 toughness, you got to have your guys in a triangle, in a 3-man weird triangle. In cases where you're trying to be offensive with the Rocks, I think they mentioned, you have to be in a line. If you play in 3 in a line, that means only the middle guy gets the 4 toughness, and the 2 outside guys, because they only have a base of 2, and because there's only one, there's the one guy to the guy that's in the middle of the line is basically the only one adjacent to the guys on the outside of the formation. They're only getting +1 toughness. So again, this is when you're trying to be offensive with the Rocks, because if you first of all, yes, you move them forward in a line. You have 3 toughness, 4 toughness, 3 toughness at a base, while they're moving forward in a straight line. To get full advantage of battle formation with all 3 of them, you have to play with them in a triangle. You're giving up attacks. More than likely, you're giving up attacks to keep the one in the back somewhere while your 2 up in the front attack attack enemy units. If I have an enemy unit right here, or a line of enemy units here, if I walk the Rocks up in a triangle position, one of them is going to be back here in the back, not doing anything because he's got to buff the other 2's toughness. So I truly think battle formation is a curse. So it's either you're playing in a 3-4-3 toughness line, or you're playing with all of your guys having 4 toughness, but likely giving up 1 attack at least per turn to keep their 4 toughness. I don't like it.
Third on our list is green. And I almost agree 100% with everything that Forrest said in his video regarding the Green's characters, planeswalkers, and spells. I said almost. Okay, the pummel roots are much more effective as a fighting force than the Rock's veterans.
I agree.
Let me explain. I'm going to give you a quick example. During the Revolution,
I guess I'll say I agree in that they're offensively more useful. Yeah, defensively, I think the rocks can be good. So when I play the rocks, that's almost literally what I do, is I will summon them in a triangle formation, like in the middle of the map or near a spot where I want to control the map, and I will generally try and use like my planeswalker or my other creatures to like do the actual heavy lifting and let the rocks like form a wall or like a chunk of like where your opponent will be taking tons of disengages trying to get around them or struggle very hard to try and kill them. But I think the rocks are generally, at least in my opinion, they're played as like a passive defensive force, where the pummel roots, you want to go shit on some things and use that trample and punch the hell out of your opponent. So it's funny that their stats are so close, but because of the pummel roots having the higher base stats and the rocks having like the better buffs, especially defensive buffs available to them in white, I generally, and I guess green having again the mobility and the power, like the stims that allow them to like do a lot of those. I'm gonna come in and kill you right now on this turn, and there's nothing you can do about it. Versus white being like I'm gonna sit here and heal and buff my defense. It gives them two different roles, at least in my opinion.
Revolutionary War.
Okay, yeah. So I've already covered some of this, but let's go with the rest of Bill's explanation. I'll get into it.
The Brits versus the Americans. Everybody's in formation, muskets, reload while the next team reloads, and everybody's in formation. The Americans won the Revolutionary War almost solely because they chose to use guerrilla tactics.
That generally speaking, guerrilla tactics will defeat rank and file formations. But there is one issue with this. Guerrilla tactics really succeed primarily on two factors. One,
you hide. The enemy has no idea where you are.
Stealth.
Right?
And
Stealth,
two,
okay.
The element of surprise or ambush, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Now, the problem is neither of these are possible in AOTP given two things. First off, the entire state of the battlefield is known to all players at all times, thus negating the stealth aspect. And secondly, ambush is not possible due to the fact that you have to summon the pummel roots on a turn in which you selected your planeswalker. So by the nature of the mechanics of the game, your opponent always has a turn to react to the introduction of a new squad on the battlefield. Save for in the case of Red's haste ability. But anyways, the point
this guy nailed it.
You select a planeswalker, bring out those troops, your opponent gets a turn to react to that, then you can select those troops you summon and use them. You don't get the chance for ambush with them. And as soon as you remove those two advantages from a guerrilla approach, then the guerrilla approach becomes weaker than the rank and file approach, if and only if you get the tactical advantage given by the rank and file formation, which is namely increased defensive ability. And what do you know? The Rock's veterans have this built into them mechanically with the battle formation ability.
Yeah, I think, he nailed it. I don't really have a ton to add, other than, yes, the entire battlefield is known to players pretty much at all times, except for hidden enchantments. However, since we're talking about green here, and even red, green and red offer very little. Red has absolutely zero hidden enchantments, and green has what, fog and naturalize, I think. I don't particularly find those two hidden enchantments to be very threatening. Naturalize can be annoying when you lose your enchantments while trying to kill a green squad, but like the only unknowns in AOTP is typically the spell hand and the hidden enchantments. And like when it's my turn, I'm not worried about your spell hand. I'm more worried about like your hidden enchants and or everything I already see on the battlefield. So the ambush thing, I question why he brought up like guerrilla tactics. There's really no such thing. I guess the closest thing I could consider is hidden enchants and the haste ability.
Also agree 100% with Forrest that you need to take full advantage of this game. To take full advantage of this game, you have to have extra terrain, whether it's homemade,
agree.
Core sets, expansions, or finding HeroScape terrain on eBay. But with added terrain comes more movement costs. And just like in baseball or college football, speed kills. Speed is the ultimate killer when it comes to this game.
Well, speed doesn't kill anything, unfortunately, in this game. Speed only causes you to take disengages for most units. Although, yeah, I'm a huge fan of green, and I think when he says speed, he means movement speed or like your move number. I think move is a huge thing in this game, especially when you jump into base green and you got the Elf Rangers and you got Nissa with their sprint abilities. Yeah, they're quite annoying, quite powerful.
The Elf Rangers can move up to 8 spaces per turn, while Nissa, the green planeswalker, she can move up to 10 spaces per turn. This is ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure Nissa and the elves both move 8. Like they can move up to 5, shoot, and then sprint up to 3. I don't know where he got 10 from. Maybe he's mixing up her range number of 7 with her move number, but
Okay, you can add this with the crazy range, and they can snipe you all day long.
yes,
in Too Bad Son's
absolutely.
video, they admit that before adding terrain, they agreed to not take any of Team Green because whoever did was almost assured victory. Now, this doesn't change
Green is
because
that
of
good.
terrain or elevation. If anything, it only makes things better for Team Green. It's just basic strategy. If you can get to higher ground faster than your opponent in real life, as it is in AOTP, you have a decisive advantage, especially in this game.
So as for speed advantage, here, Bill, you make a really good point, and this is where I feel you've made the strongest argument for your ranking of green. I have personally found that in battles I've run as green, the hit and run tactic is the only possible way to win using green. But
Yeah,
for
I
me,
agree.
anyways,
I generally agree, especially like in the core in the first set. Well, it's not really the only possible way. But your primary win cons are like Nissa winning in the end game by sprinting around, like shooting and sprinting with like Leaf Arrow, and I guess Groundswell, but that's a one-time thing. And then the other win con, I suppose, is like using Titanic Growth and or Overrun with one of your squads. Well, I guess Titanic Growth, Overrun, and Paths Revealed. Let's go with those. Like you usually want to combine 2 out of those 3, if not all 3 of them on the same turn, to really nail your opponent. But yeah, like once you get Paths Revealed, Titanic Growth, Overrun out of your way, most of the game hinges on Nissa, in my opinion. Like your path to the end game is keeping Nissa alive and dwindling down the enemy squads and trying to kill the enemy planeswalker from range.
it often ends up just delaying an eventual picking off of my units. Now,
Generally true, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of the Elf Rangers with their squad sprint because of how similar they are to Nissa. Like they both want to be activated constantly so that they can shoot and run away. And part of my problem with Nissa and the Elf Rangers both being in the same color, in the base set, where like therefore you have to use them in the same army, is they want to do the exact same thing. They want to be activated every turn. So the problem is like if your opponent is trying to, if they get anywhere near Nissa and the Elf Rangers, you have to choose whether you're going to take a turn with Nissa or the Elf Rangers, and then the other one, the other card or figure, effectively dies or takes a lot of damage. And as we said before, when you're, especially in like the early to mid game, when your planeswalker is very much like the core command unit of the army, you are pretty much forced to take a turn with Nissa and like shoot and run away to keep her away from approaching enemy figures. And so the Elf Rangers will tend to die quite quickly because they have 1 toughness and 3 life. They're very in conflict. This is like your action economy. As soon as you summon the Elf Rangers, your action economy is split between 2 figures that want to do the exact same thing of shooting and remaining out of enemy range.
I suspect this may be a byproduct of the battlefield style that we normally play on. Generally speaking, we like something really tight and fast and more varied in elevation, which does tend to negate some of the speed advantage green has. I know you say it doesn't.
I don't really think terrain negates green speed advantage. I think they mostly maintain their high move advantage. I should probably think about this a little more, but my gut says that whether you're playing on like the flat ass AOTP maps or you're playing like a level 1 to like level 3 or 4 Heroescape map, I think green's movement advantage generally is maintained.
But I think once you add in a lot of elevation, 3 move is really only 1 hex when it comes to multiple elevations because it's going to take you 2 to move to that next hex.
That's true, but he speaks as if that only applies to green. That applies to every figure. in some ways that might make green better because they have the big range, especially with the Elf Rangers and Nissa, and therefore, like since range is like a flat, like when you're shooting, all you need is a line of sight, and then everything is kind of considered like flat as far as like counting spaces for range. That it actually makes their higher range more potent than the move number, but also that they have sprint, which means their range is in some twisted sense, their range is higher than what is led, than what you're led to believe because they can move after attacking.
Now, while green is still the fastest, it does limit some of your choices with that terrain. On a more open battlefield, the advantage is greater. However, where green really suffers and why we put them in a lower ranking is their awful spells. Let me give you some examples. Overrun.
What are you on, dude?
+2 attack and trample when attacking adjacent figures. +2 attack for one turn is alright, but
yeah, +2 attack for one turn can be quite insane. Like, Overrun is worth it. I would use Overrun in my builds, like my green decks, even if it didn't give you trample on adjacent figures. Like, +2 power for one turn for an entire squad is huge. Like, I am happy to use that, especially on the Pummeroots. But like even on like the Elf Rangers, like they're shooting 5 dice. Like at a minimum, they're getting 5 dice. That's when all 3 of them are alive. You're rolling 5 dice 3 times. I feel like that's a lot of potential for damage. And again, like I would use Overrun even if it just said a squad gets +2 power until until end of turn a squad gets +2 power. Like it's good. That's basically Inspired Charge, and I think Inspired Charge is a very good card.
But the problem is the trample. The only realistic target for this spell is the Pummeroots. If your elf...
No. Come on, dude. Like, I'm pretty sure, I want to say it was one of his videos, like he said Inspired Charge is quite good. Overrun is basically Inspired Charge. Inspired Charge requires line of sight, where Overrun actually is kind of easier, because it just says a squad. Like, you just pick a squad and they go. Where Inspired Charge says all figures within 8 clear sight spaces, which means Inspired Charge works on heroes, yada yada. That doesn't matter to the scope of the core set. But yeah, Overrun and Inspired Charge, especially in scope of the core set, are basically the same thing. I would give... I mean, he says it's only for the Pummeroots, but it's like... Pummeroots rolling 6 dice is still good, but consider that when your opponent is trying to close in on your Elf Rangers... Like, so you can either use Overrun and just roll to attack, like from range, like move away, shoot, and then run further away with sprint, or you can literally just use Overrun and run in with the elves and start shitting on things. Like, there's no reason to not do that. I've done it. It's rare, but I've used the Elf Rangers with Overrun, and I've literally ran them like 2 or 3 spaces in to just start trampling shit, because... why not? 5 attack dice with trample. Like, if you think 3 attack dice with trample, or even 4 attack dice with trample, with like the rocks with like one power buff, or the base Pummeroots is good. 5 attack dice with trample for one turn is... it can be scary with a little bit of luck.
Trample is useless. They already have it. So 25 spell...
Yes, yeah, trample is useless, but again, +2 power for all 3 of the Pummeroots, if all 3 of them are alive, and that's a stipulation, I get it. But like even if 2 of them are alive, like rolling 6 attack dice 2 times, that's pretty threatening.
Points or card points for a +2 attack buff for one turn is kind of...
He's sleeping. This guy is sleeping, dude. This guy is sleeping. I have no clue what to say to that. Let's see. I haven't put out my green spell tier list yet, but I'm pretty sure I've ranked Overrun in like Green's top 5 spells. I'll pull out, when I edit the video, I'll pull it up and I'll show you. From my HeroScapers.com tier list, I did like a whole write-out of like every spell. I'll put that in the description below too. But I'm pretty sure I put Overrun in like the top 5 green spells. It is by far, and of course same thing with Inspired Charge. I think it's like top 5 white spells. It's a good card. There's no don't sleep on Overrun. Don't listen to this.
Another bad card is Sky Reaping. This literally only works on one squad in the base set, the Phoenixes.
Yep.
Those guys aren't in the game, you're not playing against red, well then, guess what? Sky Reaping is absolutely useless.
Not true. I've raged online.
A Sky Reaping spell from the green deck, which lets you inflict 1 damage on all flying creatures adjacent to one of the green creatures you control, and then draw a spell card. That spell would be great if it wasn't for the fact there are only 3 flying creatures in the game.
few videos that come out and say Sky Reaping is worthless if you don't, if there's not a flying figure. These guys are still sleeping. All right, so number one, against blue, Sky Reaping is very nice to just play it. I guess you still need a green creature on the field, but you'd expect to have that. If your opponent has those hidden enchants, like you're trying to scout for, what's the damn counter sorcery, psychic rebuttal. So like if your opponent has like one or two hidden enchants on Jace, and like let's say you have Primeval Light or maybe Bountiful Harvest or something like a sorcery that you want to use but not have it get countered, you can use Sky Reaping as a dummy spell to play it and be like, counter me. Your opponent has to counter it. If they have Psychic Rebuttal on their Planeswalker, if you play Sky Reaping, they have to counter it, or they lose the opportunity to counter any spell with it. It's a good timing card against blue to allow you to then kill other enchantments via like Primeval Light, or to heal like your Planeswalker with Bountiful Harvest. Like it's to get rid of Psychic Rebuttal. It's a dummy card to test, to scout for Psychic Rebuttal, and then you can continue with the rest of your turn once you've done enough scouting to decide what your path forward for your turn is. But number two, Sky Reaping, even if you don't deal damage to a flying figure, that doesn't matter. You could still draw a card. Like, you literally just cycle your deck. In any game where you're not playing against red or blue, which is, I think, the two best primary uses of Sky Reaping, you still get the card cycling of it. Like, you still, like, if you draw at the start of your turn, you still have it. Or even if you have it in your hand, like, just play it, and you get to draw another card. It's kind of like Healing Salve in that way. Like, of course, minus the healing aspect, which is big, but it still allows you to cycle through your deck. You get to draw another card. That's a pretty decent effect on its own. In any game that's not against red or blue, Sky Reaping basically just turns your deck into 11 cards and 195 points. In some ways, it means you get to draw into Titanic Growth and Overrun and Bountiful Harvest and Snare of the Sky. You get to draw into Past Revealed, all those good cards. You get to draw into those cards faster because you just play it and you draw the card. You don't even want to worry about, waiting to save it because you want to shoot a Phoenix with it, or because you want to test, scout for Psychic Rebuttal with it. So in some ways, I could consider it better against black, white, and I guess other green players, because you're literally just cycling a card by using it. 5-point card to just let you draw a card.
Another one is Primeval Light. It wipes the entire board clean of enchantments, yours and your opponent's. The problem is, your green troops need their enchantments to be anywhere near good in combat.
Really? Wait, which ones? Which ones do they need to be good in combat? Tell me, sir. Green has... I'm joking. I don't want to sound like an asshole. But I think, again, he's kind of sleeping. Green's enchantments, I think, are Fog Naturalized and Paths Revealed. I think those are the only three enchantments in the base set. Paths Revealed has nothing to do with combat. Fog, I feel like it typically triggers after one turn. So it's like, you can literally play Primeval Light and then play Fog afterward, or play Fog first, wait a turn, and typically your opponent will have triggered it. Maybe not always, I get it. There's things like Unsummon or True Damage, like Incinerate and shit, that just completely bypasses Fog if they haven't attacked you already. I think for the most part, Fog will typically trigger within a turn or two, so you don't usually have to worry about destroying your own Fog. Or if you're at a point where Fog is still face down on your squads, like let's say you played it 1 or 2 turns ago and it's still face down on your squad, and you have Primeval Light, I would assume that the reason you played Fog to begin with, that time has passed, and you're probably okay with destroying Fog at that point. I've certainly done this before. Yeah, Naturalize, I think Naturalize is frankly ass cheeks. It's definitely one of those completely terrible green spells, so I have nothing to say about that. Yeah, and Paths Revealed, typically I need that for 1 or 2 turns at most. I will typically play Paths Revealed as a sorcery to be like, just give my squad 3 move for 1 turn. That's usually all I need it for. They get the extra 3 move, they get the damage in that they need to get done, and then they usually my opponent will deal with my squad on their following turn, because now my squad is extremely threatening. I think the only real enchantment that's threatened as far as squads go is Fog, and even then it's kind of
against buffed opponents, especially with Elf Rangers. The chance that you get out Primeval Light and wipe their enchantments before you need to put yours down is pretty low. Now this all...
But again, your squad enchantments, they're not really that good. I feel like you have enough control or enough influence as the player, using these cards, that you can generally work that out to like have fog in place where it needs to be when you need it, and that even if you need to destroy it, it's not a big deal. To play Primeval Light to kill it, you want to kill your opponent's enchantments too. Like that's very nice. Honestly, where I struggle with Primeval Light the most is usually with Leaf Arrow and Predatory Strike. I think Predatory Strike is a Shadows over Innistrad card. Sometimes it's like I really want Leaf Arrow to get value over the course of a game because Nissa. I mean, if any Planeswalker is annoying as hell, it's Nissa to shoot and run away. Leaf Arrow can get a lot of value with her over the course of a game because she can pretty consistently stay unengaged. So sometimes it takes a little bit of forward thinking to be like, hey, if I have if I have Primeval Light in hand, like I should probably use Leaf Arrow, destroy it and get +2 power until end of turn. You should probably use that effect of Leaf Arrow before you play Primeval Light. But I think Leaf Arrow is like, for me personally, Leaf Arrow is like my primary, like, damn it, I have Leaf Arrow on Nissa, and I really want to play Primeval Light. The Planeswalker buff is like where my biggest qualms with Primeval Light typically lie.
All being said, I do agree somewhat with Bill that speed is the main strength for green. And I have found over the course...
Yeah, speed mostly meaning sprint on Nissa and to some extent the Elf Rangers. Yes, definitely.
And unless the green player is really extremely careful about where they position their units, eventually that advantage will disappear as the opponent's squads catch up to them with their range. Even if you disregard our experience, I do still feel they fail to capitalize on their speed with the redundant or extremely specific spells in the green deck. Green spells suck, and it really, really hobbles the color as a whole.
That's funny. I don't think green spells mostly suck. Primeval Light, Bountiful Harvest, Titanic Growth, Overrun, Paths Revealed, Snare of the Skies. Fog's pretty good. I like Fog enough. Sky Reaping, again, like even with all the expansions included, I still use Sky Reaping in my my green builds. It's a very reasonable card. So what is it, like 8 out of 12 are pretty good. Maybe 9 out of 12 I think are... Oh, and you get Nissa's Expedition, which I think is base set. That's also a pretty decent card as far as like, oh, you surrounded me? Well, fuck you. I'm going to have Disengage and run even further away. I would use those even now after all the expansions. Like, they're very good. I think their spells elevate them versus bringing them down.
Team Red.
Team Red.
Chandra is stupidly overpowered in combination with red spell cards. The Phoenixes...
Look at him yawning.
They can be pretty useful.
Is this not fun enough for you, Forrest? This is AOTP, sir.
Until you add terrain. Having a flying team where terrain isn't a concern and the rebirth ability is crazy strong. And the Firecats...
I don't know. I don't think Rebirth is that good. I didn't really use it a lot. I'll admit that I didn't play like a whole lot of base set AOTP only, so maybe it's better in that context, but I don't know. I don't think it's that good personally. It's okay.
In one turn.
Speed kills.
Chandra can use her ability Superheated for 1 point of damage. Then she can summon the Firecats which can use haste for an additional possible, depending on dice roll, 6 points of damage. Now we're up to 7.
Wait, what? How is a Firecat getting six damage? Wait. Alright, whatever.
And the Firecats can also deal, and let me make sure I'm doing my math right here.
Yeah, your math is funky,
I'm
dude.
gonna hop in here. I spoke to Bill about his damage calculations on Twitter because I saw that there were some discrepancies in how I was figuring it and how he was figuring it.
Yeah.
Some of it was based on a misunderstanding of how the haste ability works. But if you look at the card, it's actually you can only attack with one of them.
How's he getting 6 damage with all 3 of them when they have 3 attack each, which means 9, and they also have intense strike?
Verify the max total damage that Chandra, the red planeswalker, could do in 1 turn, disregarding spells. You get 1 by popping her superheated ability.
Yeah.
You can do 4 damage. You summon the Firecats, and you can do 4 damage with them because you use haste to attack with 1. Let's say it rolls 3 swords and then gets +1 for its intense strike. Right. So that's 4 damage.
So we're at 5 total.
And then 6 damage you can do with Chandra because she can attack twice with 3 dice.
So
each.
We're at 11.
Which is huge. But keep in mind that 10 of that 11 damage is based on dice outcome.
Oh, yeah.
So for the sake of keeping this video from getting any longer, let's just say I did the math, and Generally speaking, your most likely result is between that 3 and 5 of that damage will get through after your opponent rolls defense, depending on how much defense your opponent has.
Yeah.
Now, that's not bad, but it can only be done once. You have to sacrifice a spell card to do it. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
true.
you can compare it to Jace's Mind.
I'm not a big fan of superheated either. There are a few like really shitty red spells that, yeah, frankly, I'm going to use superheated with them every freaking time because they're just utter trash. But for the most part, yeah, like when I see most red cards, I'm using the red cards for the actual spell effects and not for superheated.
You can only do it once. There's no chance of doing that much damage in a turn again with.
Unless blue unsummons the fire cats. Blue kind of fucks themselves. I think these guys kind of miss that. Is blue can kind of fuck themselves by unsummoning things like the hookers or the fire cats, because then they can reuse their abilities when they're resummoned. But in general, yeah, I mean, you're not really going to have a ton of chances to repeat this.
Probably by far the most damage you can do in a single turn without spells or enchantments in the core set at range. The reason I know this and why I have Team Red at number 2 is because my sister-in-law, shout out to Brandy, happy birthday. She's never played a role-playing game in her life. She's never played anything like Battletech, Mech Warrior. Probably the most strategic game she's ever played in her life is Connect 4. And that's not the knocker.
The most strategic game she's played is Connect 4.
She takes Chandra and the red team, and she's won multiple games against experienced players like myself and my brother, and not really had a whole lot of issues.
She's cheating, Bill. She's straight up cheating. You know, I can see if you were playing with haste the way that he was interpreting it, red would be stupidly overpowered.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that by saying I think red is kind of the easiest. It's just the easiest color to play. Like it's just not complicated. Nearly every spell is just like attack more, roll more dice, deal damage. That's that's literally all red is. It's just like die. Just every card is just the opponent dies or dies faster or has potential to die faster.
When you combine the red spell cards,
Yeah.
that can do moderate damage to damage with minimal point cost.
Yep.
It's just again, it's all about the numbers.
They didn't talk much about like more as far as like the burst potential of red. It's so flaming insane. Like you know, you got the fire cats with the haste. That's really good. But like you consider like I think Stoke the Flames is from the first set. I can't remember. Pretty sure Stoke the Flames is from the base set. Very powerful, you know, in tandem with haste. You got fire breathing, power of fire, like twin flame, seize the day. Like these spells, they're so dumb that like you can't leave red creatures alone. Like once they're summoned, you got to do something about them. Because like if you don't kill them or unsummon them or something, if red comes out and like uses like let's say they have 3 spells, they have twin flame, fire breathing, seize the day. Those squaddies are gonna fuck you up. Like you're dead. If your planeswalker's anywhere near them, you're gonna die. One of my videos, literally, speaking of haste and the fire cats, on one of my videos, I was playing online tabletop simulator. I literally lost the game to a combo of my opponent, and I was within like 5 or 6 bases of Chandra. So my opponent summoned one of the fire cats on the high ground, rolled 4 attack down on my Gideon versus my 5 defense, my 5 toughness, and I think Intense Strike triggered, and it just dealt like 3 or 4 damage or something crazy. And then he double attacked me with Chandra. You know, I think Chandra also may have had height advantage. I can't remember. And then later on, after the combat phase, quote unquote, after attacking with Action 4, he played Twin Flame and then Seize the Day on. It was on one of the Fire Cats. It may have been the same one that he haste attacked with. And freaking Twin Flame still has high ground on my Gideon and rolls 4 dice. But you can't forget he gets Intense Strike and then also the Twin Flame effect of doubled hits. And I want to say he might have rolled 2 hits, honestly, which doubled the 4, and then gets +1 because of Intense Strike. So it's 5 hits. And I think I rolled like 2 shields, and it kills Gideon. It just ended my fully healthy Gideon on like the 2nd or 3rd turn of the game. It's so dumb how much burst damage red has. Very swingy though. You need those couple of good rolls to really work in your favor, or it kind of bones you. One of the colors that can just kill you in like 1 or 2 rolls just because of Twin Flame.
So to wrap up the rest of red, and I'm kind of going to put in some of why I ranked it where I did too, even though he didn't specifically talk about it. First off, I completely reiterate my point that you have to lead out 1/3 of the Phoenixes out of the battle in order to use their rebirth ability well, and that greatly reduces their effectiveness because they already have crap stats. Now,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't typically agree with leaving the Phoenixes out of the battle. I'll just use them as simple meat shields for the most part. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't like trying to snowball them because of how easy they are to kill, especially in the scope of the base set. Because like red later on, and I guess like when you consider like Nahiri, like dual color planeswalkers like Nahiri, but red later on also gets stubborn resilience, which then adds toughness to them, which they really need additional toughness. They really need additional toughness to like to give your enchantments longevity. But and then Nahiri also gives you like the white enchantments, which you can put on them to buff again, as Forrest said. Like white has all those toughness buffs, which then makes the Phoenixes a lot tougher to kill. But like in the scope of the base set alone, the first AOTP set, I don't like to try and buff the Phoenixes very much. Like it might be like a one. I might put fire breathing on them just to be like, hey opponent, deal with this and leave my fire cats alone kind of deal. I don't try and make them like a snowball unit. I don't like keep one in the back or anything. That's just not worth it. They have one life and one toughness, and it's like you only buff it with height advantage or a glyph. It's just not really. They're not really worth attempting to snowball. So I will usually just throw them out there as meat shields, kind of like I do with the zombies, like black zombies, or even sometimes the elf rangers from green. The last thing I will mention is that the Flaming Phoenixes are quite detrimental. In matchups against green and white because of trample and because of when you rebirth the Phoenixes, you have to place it right next to your planeswalker. That is part of the stipulation for rebirth, is that they have to be adjacent to your planeswalker. So, and that's at the end of your turn as well. So it's not a pretty picture that at the end of your turn, you can replace bring a Phoenix back, but if green hasn't played their overrun and or they still have the Pummeru Elementals like in your vicinity, and I guess and or Paths Revealed is still like hidden, and like they still have Paths Revealed in their deck or in their hand potentially, you cannot risk putting a Phoenix next to your Chandra, because when that when Overrun is played, and like either the elves or the Pummeroots get adjacent to that Phoenix and they punch it out, they're going to trample some damage over to your Chandra. They're going to trample like 1 or 2 points of damage. It's not going to be pretty. Same thing with white, like Inspired Charge. Like if the rocks are still around, you only have to pay attention to the rocks when you're using the Phoenixes against white. But it's still kind of scary in that like you have to maintain 6 spaces of social distancing from the rocks veterans. Or I guess you try and put your Phoenix behind Chandra, but you don't want Chandra face tanking rocks attacks anyway. It's convoluted, but keep trample in mind if you're playing against red or green or white and you're using the Phoenixes as red. That's all I gotta say.
Of red's damage is based on burst abilities, and what I mean by this is that you get a few chances in a game to lay down a big hunk of damage in a turn, but if those fail, then red becomes fairly mediocre. The fire cats, for instance, cannot stand up to other melee units such as the Reavers, the blighted Reavers, in a straight fight.
Nothing really stands up to the Reavers, in my opinion. At least in just straight up rolling combat dice, they're kind of beating most units in a melee fight.
He said the expansions do change red's power a fair bit, and we will discuss them at some point.
When?
Not least, I do completely agree with the good folks at Two Bats Gaming that Team Black is the most powerful in the game, not only in the core set, but the entire franchise.
Yeah, Black, this is where Bill and I are in complete agreement.
I don't agree. I don't agree that Black is the most powerful across the franchise. As far as I assume by franchise, he means all the expansions. I don't think so. In the base set, I think I would agree. I think the top 2 spots, now that we're approaching the end of their video, I think the top 2 spots belong to Black and Blue. I think I would lean slightly towards giving Black the number 1 spot, just because of Liliana. Like, Snuff Out is so fucking stupid. It's so stupidly overpowered, it's kind of insane. Black has enough good spells to make Liliana last, and to make their squads do good work. The rest of the zombies are, like, they can come back repeatedly as well. But yeah, with expansions though, so stepping outside of the base game here, like when he says the franchise, like you start adding the hero creatures into the game, Black sucks against heroes. Like, the only thing Black can really do against heroes is use Bone Splinters, which is very powerful and quite good, specifically for killing heroes. And I'm not gonna lie, but like with each iteration, with each expansion, I truly think that mostly white and green got more powerful. Like mostly with like Kiora and then the Kessig Rangers for green. Like Kiora having access to green and blue spells and green and blue creatures makes her quite annoying, frankly. The Kessig Rangers, anyone who's watched my streams should have repeatedly seen, or if you watch my videos, you will have repeatedly seen how the Kessig Rangers just shit on things with the double attack plus overrun plus Titanic growth. It's just they're so stupid. They can kill planeswalkers with relative ease, honestly. Literally just last night, I want to say, yeah, find my stream from last night. I was playtesting a custom Nissa who had the Kessig Rangers in her army, and I literally one-shot. I didn't even need the double attack. I one-shot Chandra, who was on high ground and next to a jungle piece. And for people who don't know what the jungle pieces do, when you're next to a jungle piece and you're attacked by a non-adjacent figure, like a ranged figure, you get 1 additional defense, 1 additional toughness. So, Chandra on high ground with a jungle piece was rolling 6 defense. I used with the Kessig Ranger on lower ground. I used Overrun, Titanic Growth, and Snare the Skies, which is all available again. Well, these still 3 spells available in the first base set. So you can emulate this with the Elf Rangers to an extent. But yeah, so I gave one of the Kessig Rangers double attack, which means he can attack twice in 1 turn, because that's their base ability. And I played those 3 spells, especially for the one Kessig Ranger who was double attacking. I rolled a 9 attack versus 6 defense. I rolled 7 hits, which it requires a little bit of luck, not gonna lie. 7 hits versus Chandra's 1 shield, so that's 6 damage, and that killed her 1 hit. And I spent the double attack, the second attack from that 9 attack Kessig. I shot a Firecat who was on lower ground, so I rolled a 10v5 because the Firecat had the Jungle Bush bonus as well. One shot the Firecat. Like, it's so dumb how powerful green became just because of the Kessig Rangers and because of like all the single target stims, single figure stims that green has. But and then white getting their heroes and then all the healing spells, I think from Shadows over Innistrad. It makes whittling down white heroes extremely hard. And when black tends to struggle, because the Snuff Out doesn't work against heroes, Killing Wave doesn't work against heroes, Obnixilis at any price doesn't work against heroes, or like Ever After, which is I raise your dead squatty from the grave and attack you with it. Either way, like once you kill the hero as black, like you can't use Ever After against it. You can't use like most of black's rather powerful enchantments, like the -1 toughness and power. That doesn't work against heroes. That's only against squads. So yeah, like in the first set, black is absolutely so dummy powerful because they just completely demolish squads. It's so dumb. It's so dumb how powerful they made black against squads. It really is. It's unfortunate. Like squads, it just in general, like even across, like once you get into the late game with the expansions, black still shits on squads. It's just that like when you get the heroes in the picture, the heroes help to reverse the matchup for, like, you got the Eldrazi Ruiner who has massive life too. The heroes help reverse the matchups for most colors against black.
Look, spoiler alert, black is completely overpowered. They put AOTP on easy mode, and that remains true throughout the expansions as well.
I disagree. They murder squads throughout all expansions. That I agree on, but white, especially bringing in their heroes, like the black can really struggle. I think blue also has a reasonable chance, like when they get like the Necro Alchemist or even the Eldrazi Ruiner in their army. Because again, it's like they got the big beefy hero to help them fight off or even kill the black planeswalker. Blue gets a little more. What else? Like, don't they get Essence Flux? I think Essence Flux came in either Zendikar or Shadows over Innistrad, so like they can just teleport their big ass hero on top of your planeswalker and smash your face in. Royal Mage's Trick also helps with that. That's also a killer combo.
In any case, it's really awesome to have this kind of discussion about the game, even if Hasbro has hidden it away.
I agree. What happened? I've actually sent an email to Two Bats Gaming. I found his email address. I forget where. I didn't get a response, unfortunately. I sent that like 9 months ago now. The dude's clearly gone off the grid or something, so it's kind of unfortunate. I really do enjoy these kind of discussions, and I hope some of you guys do as well. Leave me a comment below. Send me a rebuttal video about why you think I'm wrong. And I challenge you, these two fools. Who is it? Two Bats and Bulldozer, Unicorn, whoever they are. Hey, if you guys see this video, fight me. I dare you. Anyway, leave your comments. I'm always interested to talk AOTP. I'll be playtesting more customs. I'm working on my my AOTP customs non-stop. I'm going to kill the recording here. Leave me a like. Leave me a subscribe. Thanks for watching.